everybody. Welcome back to the Beyond the Peloton podcast. I'm Spencer Martin of the Beyond the Peloton newsletter. I'm here with Andrew Vontz from the Choose the Hard Way podcast at betterlab.io. Andrew, we're going to talk about the Vuelta España, just our thoughts. We're going to process thoughts on that. This is therapy for our Vuelta viewing experiences, as well as the Quebec GP and Montreal GP races this weekend. And Canada, I would say by far the best World Tour races. I mean, I'd say the best World Tour races in North America. They're the only World Tour races in North America, but I'd say they probably connect with the community and have a bigger impact and draw a more motivated, deep start list than any race potentially in modern North American history. So we'll talk about that. But first, do you want to plug anything before we get going?
Yeah, so I'm sure everybody out there is reading Velo News. They had an article this week by Jim Cotton that was about sleep and recovery. Definitely a very hot topic for people like you who are listening right now. And had a lot of interesting information. He talked to a lot of high performance experts from different teams. One of the people he talked to was James Sprague, who's the high performance coach at Tudor Pro Cycling. And he said, we don't use wearables. We don't believe the measures are valid and reliable. Instead, riders report to us their sleep duration and quality. Their own subjective sense of themselves is just as important as data. And I know I've said this before. I've been using sleep sensors and wearables since 2014. I think the first one I used was the Misfit Bedit, for anybody out there who's been in the game for a long time. Since then, I've used the rest of them. I've used all of them. And the main thing they've done is make me more anxious and neurotic about sleep. And actually improving sleep takes action. And what works is what you actually get done. And that's why I co-founded the Better Lab. The Better Lab helps you mindfully build science-backed practices to sleep better that stick. It's what we have found works. We work with the world's top behavioral scientists, sleep scientists. It's the same thing pro athletes are finding and doing. So come check us out. We actually are adding sleep extension as a practice. If you're an athlete, there's a lot of evidence that if you're currently sleeping 8 or less hours per night, if you get 9 to 10 hours of sleep per night for 3 days to 7 weeks, you can see really significant performance gains. And I bet hearing that, you're like, oh, I'm going to do that. That's a piece of cake. A lot of research shows you're probably not going to without some kind of system or guidance. And that's exactly what we built. We'll make it really simple and easy for you to put that practice into place and make it consistent. So check out the Better Lab app. It's in the Apple App Store now. It's free. We've got sleep extension coming and a lot of other practices that are simple, that are really going to help you get better sleep and feel better. And you can also learn more at thebetterlab.io. So check us out.
It's funny you say you must be working your media contacts. I think I just read something, it was in the Times or the Journal, about how wearables are ruining people's sleep. Because people get so anxious about their sleep scores that they can't sleep. I've something I've noticed with people I know. They're like, I'm so pumped up to sleep. I'm so psyched to sleep. And then they can't, obviously you can't sleep because you're bouncing off the walls. But Andrew, the Vuelta España wrapped up. Primož Roglič won. 4th career win. 5th career Grand Tour win. This is like a great trivia question. Ahead of Tadej Pogačar, 2nd amongst active riders, 11th of all time, which is really impressive. 2nd behind Chris Froome, who I forgot was an active rider. I was shocked to see that list. But what are your thoughts from this? I mean, obviously it's fantastic that our guy Primož Roglič won. We both expected him to. I think we both saw it as something not he was owed. None of us are owed anything from this world, but something that it was good for him to get after last year's debacle, you would say. So I was very happy to see him win. The way he got there was very methodical and I think interesting on one level. Like if you're really into pro cycling and how it's going and how everyone's going to be riding the same speed up climbs and you're going to have to punch out small differences over the course of 3 weeks. And if you want to finish on the podium or win and you're not a good time trialist, you got to take 6-7 minutes in a block somewhere. That's what Ben O'Connor did. If you're Enric Mas, you're probably never going to win a stage race in Europe. Outside of that, I don't know if I was super inspired by it. What did you think?
Yeah, I think on the last episode, I think we covered the man in the high castle scenario, right? the what if Primož had been allowed to actually do what he definitely could have done in 2023. I mean, that's the thing I keep going back to. Roberto Heras and Primož Roglič are tied for the record of 4 consecutive Vuelta wins. I just think it's unlikely, in my opinion, that Primož is going to win again next year. So I feel like he probably lost his chance to actually own that record on his own. And I have a lot of questions about that. The main thing I came away from this race with are a lot of questions that I want to ask you, Spencer. And I think the first question that I have, we're getting into a lot of what if territory here, but should Pog have raced the Vuelta? Because it seems pretty clear to me with the level of competition, barring him wrecking, I think he would have won this race easily.
I don't. Well, that's the beauty of not going, right?
Yeah.
I would have won that.
No.
I think it's an interesting question. I think the fatigue would have been potentially overwhelming. I mean, to go for the Triple Crown, the Giro, the Tour, the Vuelta, extremely hard. You're right. The terrain would have been very good. It was conducive to that. He probably wins. Let's just say, yes, he wins. If he wins, if he does it, he ruins his chance at Worlds, and he cares about Worlds. He doesn't care about the Vuelta. So that's the short answer, I would say.
He would have earned a big night out at the disco, though, at the end of the race.
Big night out. Really? He needs Worlds. I guarantee you, it keeps him awake at night that he's never won a World Championship.
Yeah, I'm sure it does as well. You know who I think spends a lot more time awake at night than Pog thinking about the Road World Championship is probably Wout.
Yeah. I mean, a family friend texted me, I'd fallen asleep on this a little bit. He's like, Wout crashing out 30 years old. Like,
yeah, he aged. Yeah, it's like, how about that?
Yeah. Yeah, he aged over time. Who would have thought? I was actually looking at the Quebec results from the past few years. I'm like, Peter Sagan got second in 2019. That felt like that was just yesterday. That's damn near half a decade ago at this point. But yeah, wow. Like, he's in this rhythm of, he looks amazing. He's doing things you would not think is possible. He won a mountain stage, a time trial, and a sprint at the same Tour de France. That's like unheard of. And then he crashes, and then he's off, laid off for a little while, and he's not winning big one-day races. And you think, well, he's young, he's got time. And then now you're thinking, oh my God, how many years does he have left at this level? Like 1, 2, 3. It's actually giving me serious anxiety thinking about the end of the Wout era.
Yeah, I mean, the big question is, will Wout win the Magic Mountain time trial at the 2025 Tour of California presented by Amgen?
It's coming back, baby. It's coming back. He would destroy that race, by the way.
Yeah.
People forget Peter Sagan won a Tour of California.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I think that was the year. I love I'm a Tour of California fanboy, by the way. I love that race. But I think there was a year there was like a snowstorm at Big Bear, and they had to do the time trial like on a freeway. It was short. It was like 6K long. And I think that's the year Sagan won. And that's the reason he won, because he could just ride his bike as hard as possible for 10 minutes and not lose any time in the time trial. We are officially off topic, but do you have another question on the Vuelta?
Oh, I have a lot of questions for you. So given that I don't think Primož is likely to win in 2025, and then also thinking about the Tour and the Giro in 2025, and the fact at this point, we don't know if Remco's going to end up at Red Bull. He may or may not. Maybe
that's weird. That is weird, by the way.
I have a feeling that he is going to Red Bull, and I have a feeling that part of the agreement is waiting until after the World Championships so that Tyrannosaurus Rex Quickstep can get maximal media value out of him being on the team until after Worlds. Yeah, but what is the succession plan over there at Red Bull if they don't land Remco? Like, what are we going to see happen in 2025 at the Grand Tours on this super team that now has the world's best high-performance aerodynamicist, Dan Bigham, and ice chip master
Vlasov, baby. It's time. It's Vlasov time. It's a good question. Actually, there's like a defunct, but Beyond the Peloton members only chat. I should get in this more often. I'm sorry I didn't respond to this specific question. Someone just like recently asked, what's the point of spending millions of dollars in a team if the sport's can be dominated by 2 or 3 genetic freaks? It's like, well, You want to get one of those 2 or 3 genetic freaks, but you also never know what's going to happen, right? Like think about Jai Hindley winning the Giro. It happens. Think about we don't know what's going to happen at the Tour next year. What if Tadej has a bad peach and Jonas gets lost? You never know. You just got to show up and try. They really, you're right. They really need Remco Evenepoel, because what is the plan? If not that, like, if you want to spend that amount of money, if you want to be flying that Red Bull flag, you probably need to be competing at least on the podium at the Tour. What I feel like Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Minutes, like, are you going to win the Tour, Primož? No. So shut up and stand a post. But they need Remco. Like, it needs to happen. But also Quick-Step knows they need Remco. So I think that's the holdup here, that Uncle Pat is asking for a very big number to buy him out. But here's the flip side of that. He can't stay at Soudal Quick-Step, because no one remembers this. The owner of that team doesn't want to own the team anymore. Remember when he tried to pull his sponsor Specialized out of the team and go to Visma because he was sick of funding this team? So that the clock is ticking there. I think their sponsorship agreements are through 2026, or it's either through 26 or to 2026. So they need to sell Remco as soon as possible so they can get a bunch of cash, run the team until the clock runs out, basically, and then go away. I guess is the plan there. And I'm sure Specialized wants him on a Specialized team, because
definitely,
and spend a bunch of money. You have to think that's happening, but maybe because it's so obvious, it doesn't happen because the figure gets too high. And I guess another option is to sign Urku Barada. Like, what the heck's going on with that guy? Did you see he was in the final group on stage 20? It was like the hardest stage of the race. Like, only GC riders there, plus Eddie Dunbar, who could be a GC rider. And then Urku, it's like challenging for the stage win on this stage. So maybe look into this guy, 26-year-old, never won a race in his life before this Vuelta. I have some questions about that, but I don't know. Maybe just sign the whole Kern Pharma team, Red Bull. We're looking for creative solutions here.
All right, moving on. You noted this in the newsletter. We saw some flashes of brilliance from Carapaz during the Vuelta, as we have throughout the season, yet he's not delivering as a GC rider. Or that's not true. He did get fourth, right? That's quite an achievement. However, he's there to win Grand Tours. He doesn't seem to have the capacity to do that, given the level of talent winning Grand Tours these days. Your EF, what do you do with Carapaz at this point, and what is your plan for Grand Tours? Do you become a stage hunting team? Do you shift the focus? Do you dispatch Carapaz just for stage wins? What's the game plan?
I think so. I mean, so he has a contract through next year. You do not re-sign him. He's 31 years old. He'll be 32 at the end of his contract. So you've made your bed. You've got him. I think Carapaz is not going to be a GC. He's not going to be a Grand Tour GC contender again. He's just not good enough at time trialing, unless he wants to, and this is a theory of mine. Like, these guys, Ben O'Connor, Richard Carapaz, Enric Mas, you got to go into the race thinking, I'm 4 minutes down. Like, and I've got to make it up in the first 7 stages, because what we saw is, like, everyone puts it off. It's like a kid putting off homework. And it's like, oh crap, I need 4 minutes and it's 4 stages left. Well, then it's obvious, and there's no confusion. There's no sleight of hand. But if you're Ben O'Connor, and think about Jai Hindley at the 2023 Tour, take that time on stage 4, stage 5, when people don't know you're a threat. And most importantly, no one knows it's their responsibility, because everyone is looking at everyone else saying, well, you're the favorite. Well, you're the favorite. Like, that's when you got to take this time. You can't wait. So unless Carapaz is going to do that, he cannot, I don't even think he can finish on the podium at a Grand Tour. This was it. Like, this was one of the weakest, all due respect to everyone in this race, this was one of the weakest GC fields we will see for a long time at a Grand Tour, and he finished 4th. Not a great sign. The good news is, like, think of the Tour. That's the best case scenario. That's, in my opinion, that's better than a 4th place. The guy was in the break, like, damn near every day the last half of the race after he fell out of the GC. He wore the yellow jersey. He won the KOM jersey. Like, my Moneyball theory is, like, these teams work so hard to finish 6th, 7th, 8th in the GC. Does anyone care about that, Andrew? I understand that that's incredibly impressive, and it shows that you are one of the most talented stage racers in the world and that you have potential. What's the return on that investment? I don't fully understand it. Like, I think the Carapaz Tour should be the model for a lot of guys that are, like, killing themselves for 7th place. And I think that should be the future, for at least the near future, for EF. Like, you don't have the horses for GC. Like, go in and just be present. Like, I'll remember Richard Carapaz at the Tour for a long time, and I'll look at the GC. I will not remember Carlos Rodriguez's 7th place at all. Or Santiago Buitrago's 10th place. That was probably Buitrago's best ride of his career. I don't think I saw him like one time. So I think that's the model.
Yeah, I'll also say, just to be clear, I love Carapaz. Like, I really love him as a rider. I love his character. He's entertaining. I enjoy watching him. And I've said this on past pods. I've really enjoyed EF's signature approach to winning this year, which is just a attack. We've seen it from Ben Healy. We've seen it from Carapaz. Even, like, they create separation, somebody gets on their wheel, and then they just keep attacking. And it's fun to watch. So I would like to see more of that kind of racing. It's highly entertaining. The fact that Carapaz is not going to win a Grand Tour doesn't make me like him less as a rider. I think we're just acknowledging a reality. And yeah, so I think that I have a lot of other questions related to what you just brought up, which is, do we care about the lower placings? I mean, personally, I don't know. I don't really care that much about second downward, but I think
second is a little aggressive. Let's say third is pretty good at the Grand Tour.
But I think what we're seeing, and I don't know if we just have more awareness of this because of coverage or social media from riders and them going direct to fans or what, but I think a lot of what we've seen within these races and a lot of the just really strange, peculiar behavior within teams, lack of cooperation, people attacking each other, doing strange things at same strange times, just has to do with people maximizing their chances of getting the best contract possible in the following year, and in the Vuelta more so than other races, because if you're still looking for a contract or a transfer at this point in the season, given that transfer season kicks off during the Tour de France, basically, people are willing to do some things they're not willing to do earlier in the season. And as a fan, it just gets kind of weird trying to understand what's happening inside the race.
It helps. Like, think of Primož Roglič. His team all had diarrhea. Stage 20, they're dropping like flies, hardest day of the race. In theory, he should be in trouble. No, he can just sit back because Ineos is riding for 7th place. It's like,
totally.
It really takes the pressure off the leaders in a lot of situations.
Yeah, and I feel, again, maybe it's just because we have more coverage and greater depth of coverage than in the past. My feeling is this wasn't going on 10 or 15 years ago, but I could be completely wrong. I'd be curious what Johan would have to say about that, actually.
Yeah, I know he said something about it. I don't know if I was fully listening now that I was trying to recall it, but I guess points too. We should even in the last 3 years, points have gotten so important. Right. So I'm just looking at the points breakdown. So David Gaudu gets 6th at the Vuelta. Who cares, right? 415 UCI points. That's a lot. A lot. Like, if you score 1,000 in a year, you're one of your team's top earners. And he did half of that just in one GC result, plus everything he gained in those stages. But you see Eddie Dunbar in 11th, the guy won 2 stages, 2 incredible stages. Carlos Rodriguez in 10th, you don't even remember Carlos Rodriguez at this race, just complete disappointment. That sounds harsh, but it was not good. One question for you. I've been conflicted about how to even talk about this because of where we're based at the moment, Andrew. I don't want a SEAL Team 6 situation busting to the door. Sepp Kuss, what happened here? Defending champion, finishes 14th. I know Sepp Kuss is a nice guy. I know people are being nice about this because they think he's nice. Can you remember a more disappointing title defense? I know Carlos Sastre at the 2009 Tour was kind of a nothing burger, and he was defending champion. Outside of a crash or not being able to race because you've been arrested for blood doping, I don't know if I've seen a more disappointing, just lifeless title defense, and I read an interview with him in Velo, because you're like, why is it Sepp Kuss getting in breakaways? That's an impression of myself, by the way, not of anyone else. Because he just didn't have the form. He just said he just didn't have the form. And yet you ask, in let's say you were your weekend warrior, you hear that, you're like, hey, happens to me all the time. But you ask, okay, you're on Visma. They've supposedly like hacked pro cycling. How do you not have the form? Shouldn't the training be such, like does Primož Roglič ever show up to a Grand Tour and say, I just don't have the form? Sometimes he looks a little wobbly, but never just is like completely missing the form. So I just am wondering about that. And I know Kuss, this has been a theme throughout his career. Well, he'll be the GC leader of the team and he'll finish like 10th. And you're like, whoa, what happened there? A streaky rider, hit or miss, but I don't know. They can never send him as a leader to a Grand Tour, right? After this. And then I'm a little surprised not more hasn't been made of this. This is quite bad for a team that won all 3 Grand Tours in 2023 and just were non-factors in the GC. I think they wore the leader's jersey at this Vuelta, but Wout was never going to hold that. But just were non-factors at the Giro and the Vuelta. That's not good.
Right. I'll start as you did because we always have to give this disclaimer. Sepp Kuss, I love you. I think you're a great human being. I thought that it was fantastic that you won the Vuelta in 2023. And I know that you listen closely to this podcast. It's America's fastest growing independent professional cycling analysis podcast. And for me, the moment that I knew something was way off was when Sepp did, what did he do? Like a 5-mile lead out for Wout
it was awesome, by the way. But yes,
yeah.
Right.
I mean, it was
Warning
awesome.
Signs were flashing.
Yeah. And I thought, when would we ever see Pog do this? I mean, I know Geraint Thomas let out Mark Cavendish, but that was after he had no chance of winning. So to me, I was like, is this like a bit of Stockholm syndrome? Is this just him falling back into old patterns of like, I'm the loyal lieutenant, this is what I'm comfortable doing? So he had some form that day, right? That was impressive. He's not really built to ride on the flats and crosswinds, and he
would have
was
been
laying
at like
it
7
down.
watts per kilo for actually quite a long time, probably.
Yeah. So generally, not really the kind of energy expenditure you would think someone would be putting out if they're going for the GC, which he was, and also not the kind of energy expenditure you would expect to see from someone who was way off form. So that was interesting to me. And another factor that I thought about, I believe that within the world of professional cycling, we've come to have perhaps unrealistic expectations about people's ability to have COVID and then immediately turn around and be winning races or winning a Grand Tour. I mean, we saw this with Pog and other riders who got hit with COVID and then, a week or two later, everything's normal. I'm sure you all have had this experience with many people in your life. People have very different responses to COVID. It's still a very peculiar illness. And it is possible that Sepp is having some exceptionally adverse reaction to COVID. And if you look at the body of research on this, we know that COVID can, and long COVID in particular, can have really, really gnarly impacts on endurance athletes and especially on the heart. So we don't know. So I think
Did
that
he
is
have COVID like at the Algarve. Did he have COVID at Catalonia? Do you have COVID at Basque Country? I mean, he's been serving up poops. He's been serving up turds all season.
Yeah.
Even before the COVID.
Well, and I think in addition to that, and I'm actually thinking of Keegan Swenson and some of these lifetime Grand Prix riders right now that have been doing the big miles as World Tour riders do. Sepp has, similar to Adam Hansen, he just like was doing Grand Tour after Grand Tour after Grand Tour after Grand Tour, year after year after year. And that's just a lot of mileage, literal mileage, and also metaphorical mileage on the body and mind. And at some point, I do think it catches up to you. Can some people just keep going like, Soviet weightlifters and the Soviet athletic system prior to the fall of communism, where the method was just like, we'll put 100,000 people into sports academies, and at the end we're going to have 2 who can endure like the volume and intensity of the training. Everyone else is broken and discarded. That's kind of how professional cycling is. And at a certain point, people break, Spencer. People break.
Well, yeah. Well, so Jonathan Vaughters used to brag about this. He's like, yeah, he used to train the riders. Not a good idea. Or have the team manager training riders. He'd be like, yeah, I give them the hardest possible workouts. And if they can't do it, they're not elite. I'm like, well, you just are ruining riders. What are you doing?
Right.
Except because I do. So here's my question. He did all 3 Grand Tours last year. Finished them all. Very hard. Also, no one ever so they just say Adam Hansen, he did like 22 consecutive Grand Tours. No one actually examines, was he any good? Did he just get really tired? Like that, was it actually good for him? That would be my first question. But so Kuss does all 3 Grand Tours. I definitely think it's taken a toll on him. Do you think though, physically, that you're actually adding mileage and hours when you do the Grand Tours? Or is it just what you would be doing anyway in May, July, and August, training wise?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's probably what you would be doing anyway, and perhaps with less travel and disruption that you typically have.
You are in a different, better. You're in a different. To go back to the better lab.
Actually, yeah. Like, let's actually talk perhaps a bit about how these teams approach sleep. So, Visma, Ineos. I don't know about UAE because they're a bit of a black box. They do put out some fantastic content, but I know so EF, Visma, and Ineos, they have teams that are bringing in mattresses. And
they do it at the Tour de France.
Right. But perhaps okay. That's a good point. Yeah. All right. So they may not be doing that at the Vuelta. I'm going to ask, I've got some sources. I'm going to ask around and see what's going on. So yeah, you're right. Perhaps that is the case. They are in potentially a new pension every night, perhaps on like a straw mattress.
It may not. It's not a barn for you.
Yeah, it's not the glitz and glamour of the tour, and that's for sure. So yeah, I'm not quite sure about that. I do think another dynamic that's at play here that we're not particularly privy to. Like, I know when we talked to Richard Pluga, and we've seen this in Visma's content, they have like a people first culture, and that's great. They take care of the whole human. They're not just looking at these people as performers that they're squeezing over and over and over. So like, they look at all dimensions of these athletes as human beings, which is a bit different within the history of professional cycling. I also think that there are certain realities, such as, did Primož Roglič get that whole human treatment in 2023? No, he didn't, because they knew he was leaving the team, and then they did all the ruthless stuff that typically happens when, there's a high-paid person that needs to get pushed out of an organization, and he wasn't treated very nicely. And I am really curious this year, given how much bad luck Visma has had, Jonas having a hell of a ride at the Tour, but not winning the Tour. It wasn't just the pressure of coming back as the defending champion. It's a team that has not delivered at the level that they need to deliver given their budget. And like, yeah, they've had a lot of wins, but they haven't had Grand Tour wins. So I think that there was not just the pressure of coming back and repeating as champion. I think even with a people first culture, I bet the pressure is at a higher level than it's been in years within that team. And I bet Sepp was feeling it, would be my guess.
Yeah. I mean, there's 2 types of riders. There's Grand Tour winners, and there's actually fewer than you think because they cluster among the same riders. And then there's everybody else. And just because you've won one, like let's say Jai Hindley or Sepp Kuss, doesn't mean that they can just call you up and say like, hey, bud, we need a Grand Tour win. Like, those are freaks. Like Primož Roglič, people don't understand like how rare riders like this are. Look at Richard Carapaz. Look how good he is. He's won, I believe, a single Grand Tour in his career. To be able to win multiple Grand Tours and just even compete in multiple Grand Tours, it's not normal. So we should start with that. Like, Sepp Kuss is just probably not a guy you can count on for. He's like, hey, bud, we need you to finish on the podium or better. Go. That's not super, but that's why you hold on to those riders. I don't understand the whole Primož thing. I guess he wanted to leave because he wanted Tour leadership, but they're missing him. And I know you said they haven't had Grand Tour wins. Wout saved them, really, with those 3 Vuelta stage wins. I mean, if he would have stayed in the race, probably 4 plus 2 jerseys, that would have saved their Grand Tour season.
Not bad. Not a GC win, but pretty good.
But even the lack of wins, I'm a process person, Andrew, not an outcome person. Just what was the plan at the Giro? I still don't like. That's what's most disturbing to me. It's like, so you went into the Giro d'Italia with Uta Brooks as your GC plan. Like, how can that be? There's no one else. And I know that they sent Jorgensen's season is a funny one because that actually should have been the guy that was leading the team at either the Giro or the Vuelta, because he could have probably podiumed at this Vuelta. But I guess he wanted to do the Olympics. He wanted to do Worlds. So does that work? He wants to do the Tour. Maybe he didn't want to do Tour Vuelta same year. So I guess it didn't work. But just the lack of options actually is quite shocking from a team that had too many options just a few years ago from GC contenders. I mean, I know they've had injuries and I know they had crashes. Obviously, some of this is just bad luck. But yeah, that's the most shocking thing to me. And Uta Brooks, not a great season. Let's just see how it goes next season. But this is also why you don't resign from teams on Twitter, because it starts not to look good. You're like, well, you can't just leave a team mid-contract and say on Twitter that you're leaving the team because they're bullying you. And he does seem like a very nice guy. So I don't want to talk too much crap on him. But they I don't think they put him in the best position. You can't be sending like a 20-year-old to the Giro who's like, hey, bud, can you win this for us?
Yeah.
Thanks. And I recently watched the Visma documentary about this year's tour, which is weird to watch it because I felt like I was just there and the tour was just happening. Now I'm watching a movie about it.
Right.
Marijn Zeeman, big part of that team, bigger part of the team than I thought. Like, he's kind of running the day-to-day meetings. He's gone. I think the Vuelta was his last race. So will be interesting to see how the team, that's a big piece missing from that team.
Yeah. There's something else I wanted to discuss about Primož that we haven't talked about. So following the race, his coach discussed how Primož came into the race still like quite injured and perhaps at like 90, 93%. They weren't really sure how he was going to perform. And Primož is not a man of many words, especially relative to other modern champions, like even less so than Jonas. But something that he always exhibits, and this is very fresh for me because I got into a conversation with some people recently about the mentality of winners. And it is important, and this is a quality that all winners in sport and life and business seem to have. You need to be pretty level, right? Like, there are going to be a lot of ups and downs. So having the quality of equanimity and rolling with the punches, that's a good quality to have. I also would posit that true champions, people like Primož, Jonas, Wout, they also 100% of the time believe they're going to win. They're, they're not overly optimistic people. They do not show up on a start line and think, I'm not sure if this is going to happen or what's my plan B. They're there to win. They're absolute killers. And that doesn't always, we see it in the way Primož rides, but he's just not a man of many words, right? So we don't have a lot of access to him as a human, I don't think, for some reason. Yeah. But like, the man clearly is an absolute killer and shows up ready to win 100% of the time. And I think the fact he came into this race injured, because he has hit the ground more than perhaps anyone else in professional cycling currently riding. But nonetheless, he always shows up knowing that he can win the race, and he just buries himself to do it.
Apparently he was like missing one of the little, nubs on your spine. just broke one of those off at the tour. Not a big deal. I'm in chronic constant pain. I'll just go win this Vuelta. And it's super impressive. Yeah, he upsets people. Like, he upsets journalists in the mix zone because his answers are hilarious. It's like, what'd you think about the race? Oh, the race was the race.
Totally. He's just like, I'm here to pedal. I'm here to pedal. I'm going to win.
Get out of my face. I probably felt extra good that he's on the new team, beating the team that told him not to win Imagine how befuddled Primož Roglič was when his Visma team saying, "Hey, don't win this race." What are you talking about?
I mean, go back and watch his interviews once all that stuff, his post-stage interviews, once all that stuff went down. He did kind of say the right things, but I mean, you could tell it was killing him.
Oh yeah, I mean, someone like Primož may never recover from that. Like that's how much it means to him to win and how much he has to win. Andrew, I've got to get going soon. But before we go, I want to ask you a few questions and I'll let you go and gravel. So today, actually just in like 2 hours, GP Quebec City goes. You look at the start, I kind of fallen asleep on these races. I kind of always forget about them, and then they're amazing. Great courses. I think Quebec's the easier one. Montreal's on Sunday. That's the harder circuit. But the start list, it's ridiculous. It's like the best riders in the world are here. And I guess the reason is if you don't do the Vuelta, which is becoming less in vogue for world contenders, it used to be mandatory. You had to do the Vuelta to win worlds. For a long time, that's what it was. Now, the thing is you skip the Vuelta, you do a training camp, and then you do the Quebec races because they are world championship-esque efforts, like circuit races in cities that are long, like 6 hours long. And then I have my calendar pulled up here. We have worlds in 1, 2, 3 weekends. So that's now the model. And I guess that's enough time to fly back to Europe or go on to Australia, wherever the worlds happen to be. But so great start list.
Whoa,
pretty good courses.
Pog is there?
Oh, Pog is going for it, baby. He's going for the double. Friday, the classic Quebec double that I believe has never been done before, maybe. Friday, Sunday.
Wow.
Pog is motivated for worlds. Like he's coming for the world championships. But why have these races had success when like the Tour California, what I was just discussing, just didn't, I thought that was the most like exciting US race that I'd seen in my lifetime or like my cycling fandom era, that it was like a big deal in California versus you might say like, to Tour Colorado by the end, like you'd be in downtown Denver and then you'd go a block and people had no idea what was going on, even though I have many good memories of watching stages of the Tour Colorado. But like, why has this been so successful? Like, is it just the unique Quebecois culture? Is it the fact that it's on the East Coast? It's easy to get to? Because the problem we always had in Colorado is it's high. So, okay, Vincenzo Nibali's here, but he's not going to compete because
you put him on I-70 for 4 hours.
Yeah. At like 11,000 feet on a flat. It's not going to work.
Yeah. They did race on I-70 at some point, right?
I don't know. But I know that they raced what you might be thinking of. I think it's like 287 and you go over a pass. I know Colorado well. I know all these passes by heart. You go over a pass, you drop into a valley, but it's like you're like at 10,000 feet and it looks pancake flat. It looks like you're in the plains of Kansas and it's an endless highway that goes forever. But then if you take a right, you go up, I believe it's Hoosier Pass into Breckenridge. And I think, I just remember a stage where it felt like they were on this road for 4 hours, just going nowhere because the perspective is so big. It's like the worst racing you could possibly imagine. Maybe they might have gone on I-70. I just have a hard time believe they would have the juice to close off I-70 ever.
I don't know. It's possible.
They were on highways though. It was not, that race probably could have been, the problem is if you want to go from ski resort to ski resort, the places that would pay you to start and finish, you got to go through some pretty barren landscapes.
Yeah. Well, if they bring it back, they can do it via gravel, probably. I'm just like, this start list is blowing me away. Am I remiss in thinking that Scott McGill raced this last year? Because I'm not. I mean, these are all World Tour teams. I see Scott McGill is a World Tour talent. I don't see his name on the start list.
Maryland race.
No, I feel like they did the Quebec race. I feel like Project Echelon did this last year. I could be wrong.
No way. A World Tour race? I mean, they'd have to be.
I'll shoot Scott McGill a note. I know he's a dedicated, loyal listener of Beyond the Peloton.
If he was Canadian, he could do it because
I feel like maybe there was like a wild card situation. Even if there's not, I like when I'm fabricating. So we'll go with it. Yeah. Yeah. So what are your thoughts? Who are we going to see when?
I mean, I think you'll see Pogačar win Sunday. And if he wins Sunday, but yeah, so there is a Canadian team with like local Canadian riders. So that's kind of cool. But if he wins Sunday, buckle up because we're going to see a Pogačar World Championship in Zurich. That's my prediction.
Okay.
Quebec today, a little bit tougher. I mean, Arnaud Delis won it last year, like in a sprint, like maybe one of the strongest sprints I've ever seen in my life. I'd love to see like Matteo Jorgensen, Derek G, hometown guy. That'd be fun. But I don't know if he's actually I don't think he's from Quebec City, but home country guy. I would look for someone like that today. I would say Delis, G, maybe that's wishful thinking. God, you know who I'm really curious to see is Luke Lamperti. Yeah, he had a great crit season this year.
Had a great Tulsa Tough.
That's what he went to Quick Step to do.
So, sorry, Spencer, I just want to give a shout out to my mom. I talked to her last week. She said, I listened to the most recent episode and you were talking about Tulsa Tough, and I had to inform her. I was like, I think that might be an old episode, Mom. However, we may talk about Tulsa Tough on every episode.
Yeah.
So I could be wrong. So, Mom, thanks for listening.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I was thinking, God, that could be recently. I don't know.
I'm pretty overrided Tulsa Tough.
I actually, for today, I mean, the race will probably be ended by the time people listen to this. So I don't want to be too specific with my predictions, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a strong sprinter like Delis or even Lamperti win. Yeah. But let's make it happen, Derek. I want to see a big win.
Maybe a Mohoric dropper post attack could go down. You know, he likes to do something special when he's in Canada.
Like down the Col de Frontenac or whatever that big old butte in the middle of town is called. Here's an interesting thing. So Quinn Simmons on the start list for World Championships, he's racing today in Quebec. Like, what happened there? I know he did an interview where he said racing the Tour de France last year was the worst decision he ever made. Did he expound on that? I didn't read the interview. I just
it was seeing his friend right off a cliff and dying.
Is that what it was, or was he saying he crashed at the Tour?
No. He was saying that coming back after the death was too soon. He had PTSD and he needed some time mentally, I think, away from the sport.
Do you remember? So he did not start stage 9 of the Tour. Do you recall? Oh wow, he had a bad Tour. Oh my Lord. Like every day he was finishing like in the 160s.
Well, and remember the year prior to that, he was in breaks. He was making moves. Wow. He was looking real good. He was looking schemo strong.
Breakaways.
Yeah.
Schemo. Yeah, he's going to the high paying world of schemo where you have to, your hematocrit has to be 74 to be able to compete. So I'm curious to see like the comeback of Simmet. That was a long break off the sport. And if it was the old days where like Velo News had a team of reporters, that would have been a much bigger story. Just like Quinn Simmons, nowhere to be seen. What's your what are you looking forward to most from the weekend? And then share a few thoughts from the gravel world.
What am I looking forward to most from this weekend of professional bike racing?
Yeah.
I just love
race I can't pronounce, or is it this race?
It's this race. Yeah, definitely. We got to go next year. I think that's my thought about this weekend. We did talk about going. There were some logistic complexities. You asked, why can they have this race in Canada and we can't have nice things in America? I think we all know the answer. It's the same reason that Vice was able to start and then eventually become a multi-billion-dollar company in the United States and then fail. And it's because of government subsidies and socialism, I would say, is why you can have a race like this in Canada and not in the United States. And I think similar
they have
to
a funny take on socialism in Canada. It's like, yeah, we're socialists, and then we're like billionaires.
But we have
so much friggin' money from gas and somehow property. It's like every other person you meet is a Montreal like property billionaire. I'm like, what is going on with the commercial property up there?
How about that? But they invest in things like the arts and have sports development systems that are a bit more organized than we are here in the United States. So I think my guess is that's what's going on. And then also where these races are located, the tourism commissions are excellent and do a really good job of using it to promote the region in an effective way. And they don't have lawmakers, as far as I know, shouting down the race organizers for, I don't know if you remember this, but I'm from Missouri, as listeners may or may not know. We had the Tour of Missouri for a while, And then it went away because the politicians in Jeff City, where the state capital is located, got rid of the race. So like, this is a waste of money. They got rid of it. Like they wanted to get rid of the teaching of evolution and other things. Not a real forward looking. Wanted to defund the state university. Just not it's okay. Great idea. Like, let's bring Sharia law to Missouri. Oh, I guess that's actually happening.
But your ideas in Missouri were our reality in Kansas. We actually did eliminate evolution. So when I was growing up, they could not teach evolution. Like, it was against the law.
One of the areas where Kansas was a leader, I guess.
Yeah. We also got rid of taxes.
Yeah.
Guess how that worked out. We'll make up for it in the quantity. The quantity of what? There's no money coming in. Maybe it's a tough thing to quantify, but like the Baltimore race, the Maryland Classic, it just felt like they're going through the streets of Baltimore. Maybe the circuit was too big, but it's just like, whoa, does anyone in Baltimore know this race is happening? Like the average.
Crab cake sales were off the charts. Miguel was out there spearfishing for weeks in advance.
And like, my cousin lives in Baltimore. I guarantee if I asked him, like, can you remember the Baltimore? He would have no idea what I'm talking about. But like Quebec City, they like are out city. And I'm looking at the circuit. It is a tight circuit. So that does help because everything's centrally located in the city. You could, if you were organized, unlike Andrew and I, you could go up and you could have a great day watching all the riders come by. You could take the train to Montreal for the Sunday race. Actually, makes no sense that we're not there now that they say it. But what happened at the World Championships of Gravel last weekend? And then is there a big race this weekend? The or whatever.
Yeah, we had the national championships last weekend. Brennan Wirtz won, which was a big deal, literally a big deal. He's a large rider. He's 6'5", 200 pounds. And if you watch his YouTube channel, I think he has a personal videographer as one must have to be a pro gravel cyclist. And I believe he has a video where he rides like 800 watts average for an hour. No, I'm kidding. But he did. I think he did do like it's crazy. Like 450 or 500 watts for an hour. Big boy, big watts.
Right now in that.
Yeah. So,
okay. So let's say Brennan Wirtz. This is where it starts to surprise people. Let's say Brennan Wirtz is a 500 watt FTP. Do you know what that watts per kilo is, just off the top of your head?
I should be able to do math better than this.
It's 5.5. That's like Gruppetto. That's like Gruppetto numbers. You know, that right. Starts to show you how important weight is. And then we won't talk about today, but Christian Blumenfeld or whatever his name is.
Oh, yeah.
I bet he has a 500 plus watt FTP, and he maybe thought that was enough to like come in and dominate. And then he started doing some math and thinking, oh boy, I'm going to be fighting for the Gruppetto.
Yeah.
If I don't lose 30 pounds.
Yeah. Okay. There was a lot of content created about Brennan Wirtz's. Okay. I'm sorry. I have to find the wattage. There's an extremely long article about this. Every cycling outlet did something about it. Anyway, so real underdog story. Brennan was world-class rower at Stanford, won a world championship in rowing. Has been pretty down on his luck, but then won gravel national championships. So good to see him back on top. Very nice guy. And to me, the significant thing about this race, it's, I think, indicative of the shift we're seeing in gravel racing, which is it's becoming road racing, which makes sense. It's just the same thing on a different surface. And what happened was there was negative racing all day. Everyone was marking Keegan Swenson, who apparently is physically, he's the specimen. He's the best rider in pro gravel cycling in the United States at the moment. Everyone marked him. Nothing stuck. It was a course that lacked any features that would create separation. Not a lot of elevation change. A few small hills towards the end. A lot of loose sand sections, and then a bit of wind, but actually a lot of wind. But nothing where you could really create separation. So they all just watched each other. And I think we're waiting for Keegan to make a move. Keegan made his move. Everyone sat on his wheel. And then there was a lull, and Brennan at the right time did a huge attack from a number of wheels back, came by everyone, which is a great way to do it, and created separation, and it stuck. And then afterwards, there was a lot of chirping about how this was more like a chess match than bike race. A bike race is a chess match. It's like Rand Corporation game theory, which is part of why it's interesting. So I think this is what we're going to see more and more of in gravel racing. Significantly, at the finish of this race, we can talk about it more in a future episode. And in fact, I'd love to get one of the participants on, because they did have an actual rolling enclosure for, I think, the first 20 miles of the race, and which is different than what typically happens in gravel races. And when they finished, they were not riding into a pack of like fun riders going 10 miles an hour. So I think they had, the actual opportunity to have a fair finish, which is how bike races should finish, especially when they're professional bike races, Spencer.
Brendan Wirtz, I didn't realize, so he got 19th at National Road Race Championships.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive. He actually finished that. It had a lot of climbing. And as we said, the man is 200 pounds. But I mean, he's beating good riders here. Like Colby Simmons, brother of Quinn Simmons, who I watched finish second at the Tour of Alsace this year, got third. It's good, really good rider. Russer Finsterwall, fourth. What you're saying though is, I mean, this is like time in memoriam. I think that's the phrase. This is just how like local road races play out. Like, okay, there's a strong guy. Everyone watch the strong guy. Okay, we're all coming to the line. Big strong guy attacks who's not the strong guy that we're following, and he wins. Like I just feel like this is in danger of turning into the type of racing that gravel disrupted. And then are we going to see something else come along? Like this, there's a mountain biking going to come back. It's like, oh, guess what? You can be on a single track trail and it breaks the race up. And it's not a chess match. It's more of a strength and skill competition. Like, are we just going to keep inventing? And then it's going to be like, wow, you can go on the road and it's so fast and it's very tactical. Like, are we just going to keep inventing cycling disciplines? Is that where this is going?
All right, Spencer, I did the actual watts per kilo math. So his hour power was 485. And also, you know what? If your FTP is based on a 20-minute power test or ramp test, it's total bullshit. Like, that's not what you can, even if you do the minus X number of percent, go out and try to do something for a full hour. It's very different, as I'm sure you've done it before, Spencer. Anyway, he did an hour at 485 watts, weighing 95 kilos, which puts him at 5.1 watts per kilo. And as you noted, World Tour riders are in the sixes, and they can climb at 7 watts per kilo.
Yeah, like I'm just gonna punch in like when I was at my fittest, I was probably more watts per kilo than that.
Oh, and I was not. Hey, stand back. Uncle Rico's about to throw the football over the mountain.
My point is, I was not winning. I was not winning jack diddly with that, actually. But that might be more of a me problem. But yeah, that is like not pedestrian. But that's why it's like shocking me he finished actually that well at national championships. And I mean, these rowers too, these are crazy people. These guys can guys, girls, whoever, can just this is kind of how Kristen Faulkner won the Olympics. They can just pin themselves at the absolute maximum for so long. Rowing is an insane sport, mentally and physically, what people can push themselves to. It's scary. It often makes them bad bike racers, I feel like, though, because they think that everything has to be maximum all the time. And then they maybe lack a little bit of nuance, but sounds like didn't stop Wirtz. I'm curious to see how World Championships goes this year. And then the thing, I mentioned this before, is what keeps Keegan motivated? Is this fun for him? He's going to these races, everyone marks him out, and he's either winning Leadville, winning Steamboat, the high altitude climbing races, or he's getting marked out of. I'm sure the same thing happened to Unbound. I'm sure he was just marked out of the race. So maybe we'll talk to him this winter in Tucson, but I'm curious to see where he goes from here, because this can't be fun at all.
Yeah, I could see him doing a John Tomac and just ranching or something. He's kind of got that vibe to
me. Is that profitable? This is another thing we were talking about at Steamboat.
I don't know.
What is going on there? What's the cash flow? And in Yellowstone, they seem to have plenty of money. But I do have to run, Andrew. What do we have any big gravel races this weekend?
Is the Rad this weekend? I have no idea. I don't know, but I do know a lot of farmers and ranchers. So I'm going to work my farming and ranching connects, and I'm going to come back with more. I'll give you some watts per kilo info on what does it take to have a high altitude ranch. So it's probably around 6.2 watts per kilo if you want to be a competitive Cat 3, I think.
Thank you, Andrew. And we will talk next week about these races, these Quebec races, and then World Championships. It's getting to be about that time of year.
We didn't even, I had that on my list here. We'll talk about it next time, but it's Remco, MVDP, TikTok Hotel, or are we going to see somebody else? It's going to be a wild card. We'll find out. Come back for the next episode of Beyond the Peloton.